Hello, Rita.
Hello, how are you?
Doing good. How about you?
Okay. I see Alan added something to the agenda, but I don't see him here. So,
Yeah,
do
I
you?
saw his message on the Slack the other day. Like he created this very well organized issue with like steps to reproduce the issue that he was facing and everything.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for following up. I haven't looked at the repro steps. Was there anything obvious that jumped at you?
I actually was planning to go through it today. I didn't have time yesterday to like look at it. As like he posted it yesterday, so I didn't have time to look at it yesterday. And so if something pops out, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Like from looking at the initial read, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, let me know if you need any
yeah.
brainstorming or pairing. Oh, there's Alan and Christine.
Hi, how are you, everyone?
And how are you?
Hey,
Hey.
Ellen, I was looking at your issue, and you mentioned that does it's like in Gatekeeper 315 the issue is not, and in 318 and
correct.
319 it's there. Did you by any chance try out 316, 317, and face the same issue?
Um, I think I tried 316 and the issue's not there. I can double check, but wherever Gatekeeper introduced enforcement points, which I believe is 317, is where we start seeing the issue.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. I haven't had time yet to look at all the things that you posted, so I'm gonna take a look later today. With that being said, did you have anything else on the same thing to ask or discuss?
Um, I guess no, I'll let you guys, review that and assess how we set up. I know last week you guys mentioned that you guys have never truly set up two gatekeeper instances, right? Or test against that type of environment. So I would love feedback on how we're using that setup, in addition to troubleshooting this issue. And another thing that I do want to call out in me setting up this environment that I also shared last week was even after adding the operation webhook to the failing instance, I then further told you guys that like I was seeing, I was in the constraint templates weren't getting registered. If you guys recall, I was getting these errors saying that, um, can't find the constraint beta one version, so it wasn't registered. I then realized, and again because we were running 315, today we run 315 in at some point you guys added a new operation called generate, and I was over when I was reading the docs originally, I was misreading it, thinking it was only related to the VAP, the VAP feature, but then I reread and it says and VAP, so it generates CRDs and VAP. At that point I was like, oh, I need to add this to the audit singleton Gatekeeper as well, and I got past my issue, and then all my CRDs were registered. So um, it was just new for me and my team to now note that at a certain release, generate is a new operation that we have to include, um, which wasn't apparent. But I just wanted to call that up, and I think I did in some of the docs that I sent you with that link.
Okay.
Oh, and last thing on this issue is I spoke to my team, and we've been looking for ways to like contribute back to the community. And depending on what you guys conclude, we might be in a position to, contribute the fix. Um, we're just, again, I think I mentioned JP Morgan is pretty highly regulated, and we have a very extensive kind of tedious process to get approved to contribute back. So we'll have to start that before, just maybe other companies allow it much easier. But just wanted to call that up.
Yeah,
Of
awesome.
course. Yeah. So, like one thing you said, it was kind of came surprise to you when we introduced Operation Generate, and you didn't know how. Like, just I'm asking for a feedback if we can improve our docs, or
Yeah,
how can we do a better job to
I
publish things.
I think my first thing is okay. I went to the release notes and didn't see it called out in wherever it was introduced. So that would be a really good call out in the release notes that hey, now that in this release, generate operation is a must or mandatory for CRD's generation. I think that would be key. Or in the actual docs, call out, this is new since release X. Because prior to that, was it necessary?
Okay.
That's really good feedback.
Yeah.
I guess like, are you using Helm to?
Um, yeah, that's another thing that we're looking internally to align more to upstream, you guys, right? Of how you guys release with your Helm charts. We use Helm, but we've taken bits and pieces of what you guys uh, create, in your Helm setup, um, and then we further use other charts to deploy the actual like. So we have like 5 charts. One that does Gatekeeper, right? Just the instances. One that does the templates, so
Mm,
the actual policy. Another that does the constraints, the instances of the templates,
got it.
um, and so forth. We're looking to, and this is just old setup, prior art from me joining this team, um, to like just align better with you guys and just use your charts directly and with slight modifications, likely.
Yeah, because otherwise you're always having to maintain the diff,
Yep, big
and
time.
it's really easy
Yeah.
to miss things because
Oh
some
yeah.
changes are not obvious.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And like this generate one,
Yeah,
because we
yeah.
we 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 deployed to 2 different platforms, a private cloud Kubernetes, which is the one that has this very convoluted setup, and then our EKS instance is more aligned to you guys. And so I was like, why is it working on EKS but not this? And so finally got to the answer. However, in our private cloud, we will still need to support 2 instances, like one for gatekeeper, one for validating, one for mutation, which your charge today don't really provide that. So we would have to break it up, just duplicate it, I'm thinking, and just change the, responsibility of that chart.
Cool. Uh, on a separate note, I also have one more question for you, Alan. You said you guys maintain a different GK instance for mutation itself. I'm wondering whether or not the current mutation offerings that Gatekeeper has is sufficient for you, or do you guys Like, what's the use case for you
Yeah,
guys for mutations?
it's not fully sufficient. We still maintain a OPA kube management instance that is doing some mutations. So originally that was our mutator webhook. Um, then your mutation gatekeeper capability came out, and we looked at what can we support. And mainly it's doing some same defaults for when 125 came out with all the PSA profiles, right? And so we just default a lot of stuff before it gets into Kube API or Etsy, and that's helping that area. But we're looking at the Kube management. What it's providing is the ability to, I think that the restriction with the assign mutators is that it can't reference other top level fields within a pod spec. So I want to be able to have conditions based off other fields uh, in 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 a resource that today the assigned object has limitations on what conditions it can act on, right, to mutate. And I think I brought this up several last year with you guys, and there's I forget what you guys called it, but like maybe like a circular dependency, or there's an issue with trying to provide that capability, which is why it doesn't do it today. I think Max, I don't know if he's any a maintainer any longer, but he gave a really good explanation. I have to pull up my notes to remember why it wasn't implemented that way. But kube management doesn't have that restriction, so we have full control of what part of the object we want to compare and use to compare against. And that's what my feedback is right now as far as gatekeeper's mutation capability. I was actually
Okay.
reviewing, yeah, there's only two use cases today that, oh, and the other one is, does, and I was going to look at this, does gatekeeper mutations allow referencing other objects in the cluster? Kind of like
Yes.
gatekeeper today, with the config, or I think you guys call it something else, something sync, replica. So mutation does allow syncing. Like if I'm mutating namespaces, I can reference existing live running namespaces to make sure there's
Let me confirm still. I do think it does, but
okay. Yeah.
I mean, I think this is mutation referencing different
Right.
resources, not validation. So
Correct.
for validation, we have that ability.
Yes, and
Like
we
you
use that.
can, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
But for mutation, I think that
for,
was one of the things that people asked for, but
Hmm.
yeah. For mutation, I think we only have an external data support.
yeah. Does that work for you using X?
The external data provider, the providers.
Yeah.
Um, that would entail having a separate process that does that check, your check, right? Yeah. It-
Essentially, the external data provider would be the thing that talks to your API server to
right.
grab whatever you need.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a potential, you know, solution. We haven't explored. We've explored providers for validation,
Mhm.
but not mutation. I'm assuming it's very similar.
Uh, Not quite.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like two different webhooks, right? Yeah. It's two different webhooks and the design are actually quite different.
Okay. You're
Like
saying how
like
the valid.
validating.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
You're saying it's different in that the validating gatekeeper, the way it engages or interacts with the external data provider is different.
Oh, the way it interacts with the external data is similar in that it's just an HTTP call,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I just meant like the engines are different between validating and
Oh,
mutating. I think
absolutely.
you already know
I
that.
I have that clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just taking a note, reference other Kubernetes resources, right? Can be done with external data provider. I'm pretty sure if I go through the issues, I don't think this is the first time someone asked for this, but
Right.
obviously this requires you to write a external provider, right?
Right.
And we do have some docs and examples that you can look at to do that.
Mhm.
And I think it would be a good one to contribute back if you decide to go down that route.
Contribute back.
As in, open source.
No, no, I know. But which part would you say to contribute back? What part? What
Maybe the
functionality?
external data provider.
Like an example of it?
Yeah, let me pull up
I see.
the list we have today, right? I believe, yeah, so these are the example providers. Obviously, they're not, um, like deemed for production use, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
work it and
Gotcha.
run it on
Gotcha.
your own. But I think this would be a good
Okay.
place to add in case other people have similar needs, right?
Okay. And so it follows the same contract, the interface contract.
Exactly. Oh,
Okay,
actually, there's
perfect.
already a Kubernetes API provider. Now that I'm looking at it. Yeah, you should take a look at that one. I put
Oh,
it in
yep,
the
yep,
chat.
I
Yeah,
see.
I forgot about this one.
Now, given your experience, this external provider functionality is robust enough to like, have in production because we're adding a second process that Gatekeeper is now dependent on. Um, I guess we would have to explore and thoroughly test, you know, that environment. But your experience, people are using it, like in production.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's using it in production.
Okay.
That's the part about these. It's you don't know who's using it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but I think definitely take a look and evaluate it and let us know if you need help, right?
sure.
But if you see there's actually a mutation, a example for mutation, I'll link it here. It's probably what you're looking for.
Is that the one, the API one? Let's see.
That's the API one. Yep.
Okay. All right. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah. So
That would
you might
help
not
us
even need to write your own, but like,
just enhance this one. Yeah, or
maybe
just
push an update or something. Yeah.
yeah. And
Um, other than this, referencing other Kubernetes resources, before that, you also mentioned another one. Is there an issue that you have that you want to link to?
yeah. Right. Let me come back to me so that I'm not holding up the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
While you guys
Sure,
continue,
sure,
I'll
sure.
search for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Jay is looking at a bunch of mutation use cases.
Oh, great.
Um, and so the TLDR here is, and by the way, Max is still with us. It's just he's taking some time off.
Okay.
Um, in so gatekeeper mutation is very much I would say constrained on purpose, right? So that we could do parallel processing for mutating requests, right? And because of that, we make certain decisions that kind of makes it maybe not as flexible as people would like.
Yep.
And so we've been working with Kubernetes API machinery folks because they're adding mutating
The
emission
map. Yeah.
policy, right,
Yeah.
in Kubernetes core. So part of what we're doing right now is take the use cases that people have reported to Gatekeeper, and then for the ones that you know, upstream what we call MAP, right? The mutating emission policy feature. If that addresses that particular use case, then they should use that going forward,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Because
mm.
that's in tree, it ensures
Yeah.
that there's one less hop, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously, they would never do something like, look at everything in the Kubernetes cluster, like the one that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
right?
The
So
reference.
for
Okay.
that, you will still need something like an external data provider. And that's
Gotcha.
where, again, maybe this is where gatekeeper mutation still has a good use case, right?
Gotcha.
Um, but yeah, so the mutating use case that you have, we want to make sure that it's something that Jay is tracking,
Hmm.
and for the ones that you should just use map for. You should keep an eye out for that. And whenever
Sure.
that becomes available in your cluster, you could just use that.
I love that. Yeah. So I think my two takeaways here is explore the external data provider, but first you just reminded me that map exists and it's in the maybe beta
It's
stages.
unfortunately it's an alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And so
Yeah.
it's hard for people to even validate.
Yeah.
But you could
Yeah.
do this in a kind cluster, right?
Right.
And
Oh yeah. Yeah.
again, it's more future looking. And and we're working or we're in the process of working with the API machinery SIG in Kubernetes core to make sure whatever doesn't work there, either make it work there or come up with a solution in Gatekeeper, right? So
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I think that's good for the community.
And yeah, and I linked an issue that I'm tracking with all the requests and everything. So once you find the issue that you were talking about, or uh, like if you decide to leave a comment there or some feedback, that'd be nice. Or link the issue there itself so that I have a like centralized place for everything basically.
Okay. That's 3477.
Yes.
Okay.
There are a bunch of issues already, so like go through them, and if I missed any use cases, feel free to let us know.
Sure. Sounds good.
And also just coming back to the generate thing, the generate operation, I do see it in the release notes for 318, but you're saying that you need it for 317?
Um, no, no. It's probably I was testing through 18, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
likely I missed that then, which is possible.
Okay.
You're
But
yeah.
I think we could probably do a better job at like maybe in the docs, maybe.
Can you link that? Oh, you did.
Yeah,
You're
I
ahead of
put
me.
it in
Sorry.
the chat.
Um, because I feel like I searched high and low. Ah, yes.
Yeah.
I
The thing
just
is like,
missed it.
yeah, sometimes it's hard to know where is a good place to broadcast these things. But absolutely release notes, I agree.
Would
Um,
you? Because one thing I looked at was like, and I'm maybe thinking about other projects, but they also mentioned like breaking changes. Do you consider
mm,
this a break and change?
okay.
I mean, it broke our environment
So
from
that's
315 to
the tricky part, right? Because in our Helm chart, we kind of make a conscious decision to include this operation by default and not like work around the
mm,
making
mm,
change part. But probably we could have just said that this is now a must and required, and if you are managing your own chart, then this will
yeah,
break you.
yeah, fair enough.
Let
Yeah,
me just add a breaking change there. I think it's different enough to add a warning to your point. Yeah.
yeah, or a warning. And to be honest, I read this so fast that first time where I was like, oh, this is VAP. I don't need it. So yeah, it I just read it too fast.
Yeah, I'm updating the release note as we speak. This I love this type of
Oh,
feedback.
nice. Great,
It's
Yeah,
great.
so valuable. Yeah. We're so close to it. Sometimes it's hard to
Yeah.
um, foresee what the problems are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have insights on that map, like promotion to
The
beta one?
beta.
Is it looking for more
Yeah.
feedback or?
There is a we were just talking about this. There is an issue right now. I can link it. Um, yeah, you can track, but basically it's something that we are tracking as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Uh, let me- Any other topic from you?
Not at the moment. Thanks for the input.
For sure.
I guess, sorry, Jay, when you're looking at what I provided on the issue, I know
Uh,
last,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
oh, I know last week you guys, were concerned about having two gatekeeper instances with the webhook operation, um, because of how it does the status work. Um, and in early testing in that environment, policy seems to get enforced as expected, but maybe that's um, not enough testing or uh, I guess I want to ask is that still like a true valid concern or invalid configuration setup that you guys say, yeah, don't do this because
So
gatekeeping.
at scale, you will face issues more often because like multiple things are trying to write on the same resource. It will eventually get resolved out, but it will generate a lot of um, error noise in the logs as well.
I see. I see. Okay.
And it's like a burden on API server itself, right? Because it will once it fails, it will retry
Mm.
certain times as well.
Is it okay we spend after you guys go through agenda a couple of minutes on understanding that status functionality? I don't think I have a good understanding of how that's working. Thanks.
Sure. I think retailing the issue for map graduation in the Zoom chat.
Ah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Do we move on to the next one? Cool. Um, I addressed your feedback for in the on the design doc, and I added like some of the samples of how some enhancement that I'm thinking of could look like in that. And then, yeah, I think everything else looks good to me. There are like few, like there is only one open question that I had, and I was hoping we can brainstorm on it.
Sounds good.
So the question I had was, like, let's say a connection resource is deleted, but the backend connection that we maintain actually is not deleted, or some error happened there and is not able to, like, we are not able to delete it safely. How do we inform user about that? Like, hey, there was this issue, this connection or these files related to these connections were not safely removed or deleted or closed. Right now we just log it, but since the resource will not
Mhm.
be there anymore, like how can we do it?
When you say the resource is not there, which resource are you referring to?
The export resource that we create the connection based off of.
Right. Uh, so let me just make sure I understand your question. So you create an export, you created a connection resource, custom resource, right? And that has the connection stuff in there. And then, but the actual connection is failing. Is that
So uh, actual connection is failing, but as long as the resource is there, we can report the errors back, right? Like in terms of creating connection or publishing.
sure?
The problem is that when the resource is deleted, indicating that this connection shouldn't exist anymore, and we try to delete the connection and associated resources and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
and for whatever reason, there is an error there. Like how do we?
Yeah. Uh, like for example, say I created a connection CR, right? And then for say disk, right? And then as I'm deleting that, um, I don't know, like maybe what's the actual when you say there's an error, can you give me an example of like a
So, for example, right now in the disk driver, like when we delete a connection, we actually delete the files as well, or try to delete the files as well associated with that connection.
right, right.
Uh, and let's say some other entity is reading on that file with a lock on it, and we fail to delete that file. That's an error, right? And sure, we can do retries and whatnot, but like at some point, if that's just an error that's not transient.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Um, okay. So yeah,
And so I think there are two parts of this problem, right? Like right now, what we do is we actually remove the connection from the map that we are maintaining itself after all the errors are resolved and we are successfully able to clean up after destruction of a connection, right?
mm,
We should probably flip that, and as soon as the resource or CR itself is deleted, we should remove the map, like remove the connection object from the map so that subsequent publishes or whatever that's supposed to happen does not happen, and then try to figure out the cleaning. So I actually have a draft PR up for that part, but I
mhm.
was confused about like error reporting thing.
Yeah. The reason why I'm hesitating is I can see potential issues of not like dangling resources hanging around. Yeah. But then at the same time, you also don't want this to impact like gatekeeper resources, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so actually on the same vein, like if let's say all the resources are up and running, and if we remove that connection CR, does it do cleanup on the actual provider? No, right? I feel like these are two different things.
What do you mean the cleanup on actual provider?
But like the provider is gonna do what the provider does, right? Like the
Yeah,
dip
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
dapper, whatever, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, all the connection CR is doing is just letting us know about the status of that connection and making it available, right, uh,
yeah.
for policies to use it, right? That's all
Yeah.
it's doing. Uh,
Yes, but we have a cleanup function or like a sort of close function backed into the system in itself. So, and right now for disk driver, in Dapper, we don't need to clean anything up. It's just close. But for disk, we are doing the cleanup, like we are removing the files that were generated by the connection in itself.
yeah, but you see how
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it should be separation of concerns, right? Like, uh,
But so then, like, so you are saying that driver should periodically clean up after itself, like provider should clean up after itself, anyways. Like it doesn't need to depend on whether or not a connection is deleted or not. But in that sense, like when a connection is deleted, there's bound to be some files that will linger around.
right.
Maybe the guidance is that like we have whoever the reader is clean up as well, but I don't know if that's a good solution.
Mm, let me think about this a bit. Yeah. Because I get that you're using the connection to trigger the cleanup, right?
Yeah.
To tell the provider to go clean up. Yeah. I mean, in some sense, that's what you're doing with Dapper too, because you're saying, "Hey, close." So
Yeah.
Dapper is doing the cleanup, right? You just
Yeah.
don't care because you didn't write that, or like you're not Dapper. Um, yeah, and I think so from that perspective, I think we should treat the disk provider like really no different from the Dapper one, right? Is the connections job is send the signals and do the handshake and everything, but after that, it shouldn't care. Um, now, now let's say in the corner case where you have an old like file sticking around, and then the new connection, it's how do you deal with the existing files? I guess.
I mean, in that case, like the disk driver is set up in a way where subsequent publish cycles happen. It will clean up after the old files in itself. So the file number is static, and that cleanup is
Right,
going to be there.
right. So new connections will clean up first, basically. But your point is if the connection is gone, or like the config is gone, right? But the files are still there.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
is
I
it
feel like that's just a provider thing. Like the
okay?
provider could do a better job of do the actual cleanup.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because that could always happen. You don't know what the provider is going to do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think that makes sense. So I don't think that will be part of this design doc anymore. Uh, I'll just raise a new PR to fix that thing in disk driver
But
as
you should describe it though. You should add a comment in the design doc that just the fact that we discussed this, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But it will be on the export, like the other design doc we had to make it
Oh,
generalized.
I see. I see. Um, right.
Like define the um, define the intent behind the close method, right?
Right, right. Absolutely. The contract. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anything else from that doc that we should review together?
I didn't see like other any of the major other comments of yours, so I don't think so.
Okay.
Do you think this is in a good state? I actually shared it with Noah anyways, so
Mm. Yeah. I think it's ready to for implementation. Yeah.
okay. Perfect. Okay, I think that's all I needed for this meeting. Maybe
Uh,
next time.
although what you just brought up, I'm wondering if you've considered like, say if this resource got deleted, like is it gonna trigger the providers to clean up? Does it do that?
I mean,
Or
it
should
will
it?
it
Yeah.
will invoke the close method in the provider. Yeah.
Okay, it would. Okay. Where do you say that?
Okay. I mean, it's part of the interface contract. So, like,
Okay.
they will need to implement a close method in the provider in itself. Let me
Yeah, I
pull.
guess it's not in this doc, it's in the other doc.
Yeah, it's not in this now.
Okay.
I'm looking for that doc. So, here it is. I shared it in the Zoom chat.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Well, I guess like yes, it's in the contract between the provider and the client, right? But specifically, I'm calling out what is the expectation from the export connection config is, like, for example, if you remove it, you remove the connection, right? Is that the place to call close? Or when you delete the whole CR, is that the place to call close or both? So I feel like that is part of export connection config design.
But so, what's the difference between removing the CR and closing the connection? Like, we only close connection when the resource is not there, right? Like, if the resource exists.
What if you remove a connection? You could have more than one, right?
I mean, right now we don't. Like, only one connection, like one CR supports only one connection.
Mm, like yeah, I think this came up last time too. Is in the future, I guess.
Yeah, in the future, yes. I mean, so that will also be subsequent resources, right? Like one resource per one connection.
Okay, so then deleting the CR is closing the connection. Okay.
Yeah.
And creating the CR is opening the connection.
Yeah.
I mean, if can you just make sure that's in the doc? Like
Yeah.
it's not, maybe it's inferred but not explicitly.
Yeah.
Also, do we validate for uniqueness today?
No, we don't.
Should we?
We only support one connection right now. So, I mean, so the connection is mapped to the resource name. So, in a sense, we are doing it.
Mm. But not the
I mean, configurations can be the same, but it will be a different connection because it's mapped to the name of the resource itself.
right, but like different CRs, right, could put in theory could be talking to the same actual connection. Like
No.
like say the disk one, right? What if you're writing to the same?
So you're saying, what if you write to this, like, what if you create two resources to write to the disk one in itself, and it will, since we are using audit timestamp as the name of the file, it will write to the same file.
Yeah,
That is possible, yeah.
I think that's yeah, but then again, as you said right now, we're only doing one connection,
Yeah.
right? But like, how do we prevent people from creating multiple?
I mean, they can create multiple. It will be just no.
Okay, because you were just looking for that one
Yeah.
name. Okay,
Yeah.
that's yeah. All right, let me think about the corner cases. Oh, so then we couldn't have multiple. So you couldn't have like say some like for some things I want to write to disk, and then for some things I want to write to Dapper. Like I wouldn't be able to do that, right?
Right now, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the, I think, natural next step.
Okay.
Enable that multi connection feature.
Okay. Can you maybe? I think this is captured in solution. Um, let's just if you don't mind adding like a feature, like for yeah, please add a feature to support multiple connection objects, or sorry, resources to support more advanced scenarios. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Uh, all right. Hope that is
Maybe I can add a new section down below saying that future work and probably list out like bunch of other things that we may want to do.
yeah. I think that would be good, and maybe like yeah, I think that would be good. And in the solution one, would say something like refer to the future section. Um, okay. Anything else?
Um, Nothing else. I mean, if we have time, I think Ellen had some questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really wanted to understand the role of the status operation with relation to, I guess, the constraint templates or constraints, and just have a good understanding of that mechanism.
Like what is the purpose of creating such CR, you mean?
I
Um, I think more first, what is the purpose of the status operation that you guys add to the audit gatekeeper, and what is it doing with the statuses that it writes to these objects, right? And which objects are they writing to? Is it both constraints and constraint templates, or is it just constraint templates?
Do you want to go first, Jay?
Yeah. So I think you're talking about operation status, right,
Yes,
Ellen?
correct.
Yeah.
Well, are you talking about that, or are you talking about the status that author writes to?
No, so well, let's see. This one that Jay pinged in operation status is the one that we have concerns with having two gatekeepers with the operation webhook, correct? Yeah. So I care more about understanding the status capability.
Okay, yeah. Again, since we're writing violations or audit writes violations to the constraint status field, that I thought you were talking about that, but sounds like we're not. Okay, cool. Um,
So as far as I recall, this is not for particularly constraint template or constraint. I think this relates to all types of statuses that we have, and which pod can write those statuses is indicated with this operation status.
Okay.
or which
Aggregate.
pod can aggregate all those statuses. So, like for example, we have like four, not which pod can write, but so the mechanism is we create a status sub resource for every pod, and then there is only one pod that can aggregate all those resources and actually post it um, on the parent resource, right? Like for example, let's say if you look at the constraint or constraint template status, you will see by pod status fields for four different pods, but those are individual resources created by respective pods. And
Hmm.
then audit pod looks at four of them, merges them, and then posts it on constraint template status or
Mm.
constraint status. That's the same
Okay,
for every other status as well. So that's what I think the operation status relates to.
got it. And okay, so and the concern of having the webhook, I guess, what is the concern with web running the webhook operation on two different Gatekeeper instances with that in mind now, the status by pod?
So I mean, as long as the status is there only on one pod, like singleton pod,
Hmm.
there won't be a right contention on the parent resource, but like the more pod you have, the more status resources are generated, and all of them are combined together on a status, right, in itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so I think that's about it.
Yeah, if you have multiple webhooks, right, that then definitely you have multiple status pods running, right?
Yeah.
Multiple status pods. Um, no, I guess maybe can I share and show you how the
Yeah,
setup was? I
sure.
think this will at least clarify some confusion maybe. Uh, Let me bring up the doc real quick. Okay, it's loading. Share screen. Okay. So, wait, Zoom, get out of here. Oh man, where did I go? Jeez. Now I don't know how. Oh, hold on. I screwed that up. Okay. So if I just open up this playground again, this is the one I shared with you guys. Um, and sometimes the image doesn't load for some reason. So in this setup where I have 129 and gatekeeper 315, I have a gatekeeper singleton and down here in the bottom. That is just the audit pod with these operations, right? With 318, that setup continues with just the audit gatekeeper running audit status, mutation status, and now generate. But, I still have these two separate instances running validation with Operation Webhook. And the workaround for gatekeeper mutation is I added the webhook operation. And
Yeah. So
is this setup a concern right
so
here?
that's the problem, right? Is now you have two uh controllers. So validating gatekeeper operation webhook and mutating gatekeeper operation webhook. Now
Right.
you have two different pods, both have their own controllers acting like doing the same thing.
Yeah. And doing the same thing, meaning registering the constraint templates, processing
Registering the
the,
constraint templates and uh I guess constraints, like yeah, like
yeah.
any of the control of gatekeeper watcher will basically be there.
Okay.
And
But
they will, so they will create their own sub resources, like status resources, pod status resources. but they won't attempt to modify the constraint template to write to it.
Right, right.
So on that part,
It's just a duplication of
yeah,
status
yeah.
and a duplication of registering the resources, right? And but there's no risk in like own like this mutation gatekeeper only registering the constraint templates and this gatekeeper being in the dark of missing constraint templates because they're both watching for the respective objects. They'll both register them, and given the right mutating webhook configuration to route to, the right resources to validate, then it should be okay.
It should be okay, but like if you do like um
So
uh
I'm
yeah, sorry, yeah. Hold on, let me I'll send you some commands. Like if you run them, you'll see that they're duplicates. And because they're duplicate like pod status like actual resources, the the status operation will basically be confused about which one is actually the one that is
Hmm.
technically watching on that constraint resource or constraint template resource.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
if you can send those commands, I'll take a look at
yeah,
that.
I'll
I guess ultimately then we this setup here, I know it's new for you guys, but ultimately if we can get mutation gatekeeper to just run without the webhook operation, because I just want it to be a mutation
yeah,
webhook,
that's the
that
bug. Yeah,
that's the fix. Yeah, and
exactly.
ultimately I care about getting
Yeah,
that
yeah,
to that state. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
cool, 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 cool.
And just to I think maybe something I said may have also confused you is today we say you shouldn't run multiple gatekeeper webhooks. It's also in that sense, it's like it's almost like having two like you know how in your graph like you had
Hmm.
a one validating webhook and then one mutating, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But we have seen people sometimes because they're different people having access to the same cluster, they have multiple instances of the validating webhook.
Oh, okay, okay, okay,
So
okay.
that's not a good
Invalid.
idea because
Yes,
then you have like two webhooks taking up like going through each request.
yes.
You know, you can think of it like
so I'm kind of confused, right? Like there will be only one webhook configuration, validating webhook configuration that will exist, and these two pods will be in separate namespaces with separate services and whatnot. So
yeah.
which
No,
one actually gets the request?
no, no.
Well, no, you could have multiple. Yeah, go ahead.
It's in the same namespace, right?
Oh,
I
okay.
in same namespace, two separate services, and the validating only points to the validating service and webhook configuration, and the mutating webhook configuration points to the mutating service, and that's how
Okay.
I route traffic. Yeah,
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure. I was like,
yeah, yeah. Sure, sure.
yeah, but like you could totally have two multiple gatekeeper services, right? Like endpoints for, and then multiple validating webhook configs
Right. That too.
into multiple
Different.
endpoints.
Correct.
That's totally possible. You could do that and it will work, but then you'll probably see issues eventually
Mm,
because they're like you'll see the requests are taking longer, for example, right?
I got you.
Yeah. Okay. I'll send those commands to you on Slack then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
All
cool.
right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Thanks.
Have a
Bye.
good day. Bye.